Welcome back to the Accounting Working Group podcast. I'm your host, Stein Smith, and for our first episode of 2025, I'm bringing back a person who has been on the podcast previously and who I know always has excellent insights and really his hand on the pulse of everything going on in this space. Pat White, CEO of Bitwave. Pat, awesome to have you back on.
Sean, it's great to be on, man. Good to hear you. Good to hear from you. It's been a hot minute. I hope life is going great.
Everything is going well, Pat. Thank you. And likewise, my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to hop right into it, Pat, why don't you give us just a quick introduction of you, Bitwave, and I have heard and I have seen some interesting news out of Bitwave.
Yeah. So hi everyone. My name is Pat White. I'm the CEO of Bitwave. Bitwave is we call ourselves a digital asset finance platform, which is we have this very basic idea that, as enterprises adopt digital assets, they will have a large stack of problems that they run into, everything from accounting to tax, financial operations, treasury management, and now we're really focused on payments. And we solve all of those problems. So we help you with your accounting, your tax, all of that. Bitwave.io if you want to check it out. We have over the past year, we have gotten really serious about payments and digital assets. I think
Mhm.
you know, it is the killer use. So I kind of make this joke. There's a great quote that Winston Churchill said about America, which is, America can always be counted to do the right thing after exhausting all of their options. And I kind of feel that way for crypto when it comes to payments. So like
Mhm.
Satoshi in the white paper mentions buying coffee with crypto. And then
Mhm.
we spend, the first 5 years of crypto, we spent arguing about whether you'd ever buy coffee because Bitcoin was designed to be deflationary and no one would ever buy coffee with a deflationary currency. So we spend the first like 5 years of crypto trying to replace the Federal Reserve. And then DeFi comes out, and we spend the next 5 years trying to replace lending protocols and swapping. And we have our foray into monkey pictures and meme coins and all this stuff. And we're 15 years on now, and we're finally like, hey guys, what if we try payments? It's like, yeah, what
That's
if
a
what if we
radical
try
idea.
payments? What an amazing idea. How did you guys all think of this? And it's one of those like really funny moments where it's so obvious. Now in defense of us as an industry, like there's a lot of like work that had to go in. We had to like get to the stable coins, and there was regulatory issues, and you have to have Bitwave as a product that can help you bridge the gap between your ERP and the payments that are happening. But I think we're at this moment that I haven't been this excited about digital assets in a long time. Like, not that I
Mhm.
was unexcited about it, but like we're at our Excel moment where like the killer use case for digital assets is worldwide payments.
Mhm.
The For a long time, even at Bitwave, we've said this that like we deeply believe that every business will have digital assets on their balance sheet in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
That
Yep.
digital asset is going to be stable coins. Like I wish it was Bitcoin. You know what I mean? Like I wish everyone was buying Bitcoin. But you saw what happened at Microsoft, right? There was that,
Yeah.
there was
Yep.
that little board fight to try to buy Bitcoin, and they lost. Like,
Yep.
so it's not going to be Bitcoin. It's going to be stables. Microsoft's already getting paid in stables. EY is getting paid in stables. Google's getting paid in stables. All these guys are getting paid in stables. This is a really unique moment in the industry when a lot of the noise and a lot of like what I would say maybe the scammier parts of crypto have
Mhm.
moved over to AI. So like the AI has attracted more of the scammier parts of crypto, and we're left in this moment where there's like some real amazing actual use cases. So Bitwave, we just launched our the Bitwave payment network, which is essentially it's a network for people that either want to get paid in crypto, want to pay people in crypto, want to pay in other types of currency. It's actually not restricted just to crypto. Or folks that want to provide services, so helping swapping, bridging, on ramp, off ramp, all of that, and it's all underpinned by Bitwave Payments, which is our platform that Coinbase uses and other of our big customers use. But essentially, it's Bill.com, but for digital assets. So it's bring your own key, and the way that we talk about it is the promise that I make, and the reason I love this so much is that if you are going from USDC on ETH and you're paying a vendor USDC on ETH, we will never take bips on that transaction. Like the
Mm.
era of my account to your account costing bips is over, and
Mhm.
that's
Nice.
like the beauty of all this. Um, and so that's what we built up. And if anyone's out there interested, come and check it out, bitwave.io.
Absolutely, Pat. And it's always awesome to meet with you, talk to you either on the podcast or in person. Because I have to be honest, after every conversation with you, I always feel as if I've got an IV of Red Bull, right? Because
Let's get at it.
you're always animated, you're always ready to really sort of, get hands-on with it. And, I would say to your point, first of all, there are plenty of excellent folks doing great work in AI, but it is, I think, a bit of frothy right now.
Yep.
And in terms of headlines, right, there's a lot going on as of our conversation right now. There are headlines coming out of the White House on stable coins, crypto audits, tax guidance, all the rest. So there's going to be plenty to work through and talk about. But I would agree, right, that in order
Yeah.
for on-chain assets, right, to really go mainstream and to be used by people and to really operate as advertised, they are going to have to be able to be used as a medium of doing business. So I do think
Yeah.
any applications that can help with that are really going to do thing well going forward.
I mean, it's what money is. Like
Yep.
money is B2B payments. I know that's a silly thing to say, but that's like money is B2B payments.
Yeah,
And it's the
that's it.
original use case for this. And so the idea of, it's $170 trillion flow of funds throughout the world on a yearly basis is the B2B payments market. And like it's just so perfectly set up for disruption because there's so much friction, there's so many fees, there's all these different things that come into play there that crypto is digital assets are a perfect complement there. Yeah, it's fun times.
Yeah, absolutely. I can feel my beard actually turning gray. Every passing minute as I have here on the other monitor, I have some feeds from X and at the White House right now. I can feel it going gray. But in terms of our actual topic, right here today, there was obviously a massive hack that had just occurred at Bybit, and it made headlines. It was, I believe, the biggest hack of a crypto broker dealer of all time,
Yeah.
right? And so obviously, there are headlines involved and all the rest, but purely on an operational point of view, Pat, what happened and how was such a large hack uh even possible?
Yeah. So I will, okay. Uh, I wanted to get on this podcast to talk about this because mostly, I mean, it's almost like for like a therapy session, to be honest. Like this hack is something that keeps me up at night that we in the crypto industry have really not addressed holistically. And like I will say at Bitwave, we've spent a lot of time thinking about how to protect against this attack because there's sort of like two different flavors of it. So I'll explain to you in the easiest way possible. I'll explain to you what happened, and I'll
Okay.
explain to you like how you as financial professionals in this space need to start thinking about this. So what the physical attack that happened is, and I think they've all agreed that this was North Korea, the Lazarus group that did this. So
Hmm.
the physical attack that happened is this was not a direct attack against Bybit. This is what people call a supply chain attack. And there's different flavors of what a supply chain attack looks like. But what it basically means is that somewhere in the supply chain of software that you use, there is an attack that there is a exploit that is exploited to target you in particular. And so the very, very first version of this, like, sorry if this is like super boring, but this actually,
No,
there
no,
was
absolutely not.
the very first version of this, there was about 7 years ago, someone discovered a package on NPM. And NPM is this place where you can basically upload some code and it makes it really easy for other people to use that code in their project. So they call it like a package manager website. And so someone uploaded this. There was a package out there that was floating around that NPM is notorious for having really dumb packages. Like it'll have a package that has 3 lines of code to like trim the spaces off the left-hand side of a string in your code. I mean, something you just like you absolutely wouldn't need to. Like they'll have a package that just adds 2 numbers together. Like I promise you, don't take my word for it. Like every programming language allows you to add 2 numbers together, but someone still publishes a package like that. So there was a
Hmm.
package like that out there that did something really asinine, but like it had 9 million people using it. It
Wow.
was like everybody, like the NSA was using this package. Everybody was using the package. and someone had let their domain lapse, and so an individual was able to basically take over ownership of that package by buying the domain of the maintainer who had been the original owner of it. And they injected this chunk of code that was, if you were to look at it, it was basically like maybe 20 lines of code that just looked completely random, like
Hmm.
totally nonsensical. So if you were to look at that, you would not know that there was anything interesting in there. Like it just looks like someone like had a comment in the code that was just totally random and like it just doesn't matter. You wouldn't even think twice about it. In fact, what was happening in that code is that they'd written and then obfuscated, which is this technology where you basically can take the code you write and you can like manipulate it in such a way that it doesn't look like code. So they'd written this code, they'd obfuscated it, they'd embedded it in here. And what it was doing, it was watching for uses of a particular JavaScript library that was for Bitcoin.
Hmm.
And if you tried to do a Bitcoin transaction of a certain size in the JavaScript themselves, so in your browser, completely
Hmm.
transparent to everybody, it would swap in a different address for the address that you had intended to put in there. So
Oh,
this
wow.
was this was the very, very first example of this that we saw. This was like 7, 10 years ago, something like that. And it
Hmm.
was it was a classic supply chain attack. We've seen a few more of them over the years. All of that is to say, in preamble to the Bybit attack, the Bybit attack was an incredibly targeted attack against not Bybit, although they were the ultimate target. It was attack against Gnosis Safe. So the second thing that keeps me up on that, so supply chain attacks like I just described keep
Hmm.
me up at night because they are so hard to detect, they're so dangerous, they're so dastardly. The second thing that keeps me up at night was one of when I was at Cisco. Cisco had a red team. So what that means is there was actually this team inside of Cisco that was a set of security experts, and all they did was try to hack other people inside of Cisco.
Okay.
Um, and it's really fun. I mean, like, look, if it wasn't all terrifying, it was actually super
Well,
fun. And they
intellectually,
were,
it's a fun
yeah,
exercise.
intellectually, and they were allowed to do whatever they wanted. They would tailgate people into buildings. They would impersonate, they would try to socially engineer you. So they would, send you messages impersonating your mom and things like that. Like it was a serious team of
Hmm.
hackers that were there to protect Cisco's assets. The worst hack we ever had against one of the teams I was on is that the red team was able to essentially get a set of code by tailgating someone into a building and walking up to a developer machine and plugging a USB drive directly into a developer machine. And
Oh,
then what that
wow.
USB
Jeez.
drive did is it had this little keyboard app on it. So as soon as someone logged into that machine, it ran a bunch of shell scripts and took over that machine. And then they were able to basically get code all the way out to production. Now they did obviously their code was not malicious, but
Hmm.
by targeting an employee, they were able to get that code all the way out to production. That's exactly what happened in this situation. Is that the North Korean hackers targeted a Gnosis Safe employee. They
Hmm.
were able to compromise his machine through a direct, like a spear phishing attack, which is an attack that's like, again, like it's pretending like your girl, like imagine getting an email from your girlfriend that's like
Hmm.
very, very, very convincing that you click on a link and then they take over your machine. So they were able to target this developer, get to his machine, check in code. And this is where it was so nefarious. Like they knew that Bybit had a very large Gnosis safe because everything on the
Hmm.
chain is open. So they
Hmm.
knew that Bybit had a huge Gnosis safe that was their cold wallet, and they knew exactly what that address was. So they wrote some code that basically it sat there completely dormant inside of Gnosis Safe. So everybody came in every single day using Gnosis Safe a million times with this code. And it wasn't until this one single field had the Bybit hot wallet in it, or the cold wallet. I don't know if they call it the hot or the cold wallet, but the Bybit wallet was in it. That what they did is they actually changed the screen. So they injected code so that the screen looked like they were creating and then approving one transaction.
Hmm.
So let's say that they were trying to send $1 million to one of their other wallets or something like that. So
Sure.
what the user saw, so the Bybit finance person saw was moving $1 million to wallet 123. That was all correct. It was exactly what they were expecting. They hit save. The way Gnosis Safe works is that multiple people have to open up the UI and hit approve on that transaction. So someone else came in, opened up the UI, hit approve on it. They saw $1 million to XYZ address, the same one, that's correct, that they had approved, all that kind of stuff. But then when that transaction hit the blockchain, what actually hit the blockchain was $1.5 billion to North Korea. And it is
It's a little different.
a little different, right?
A little different, yeah.
A little bit different. It is an incredibly dastardly attack that is, so it is 100%, Gnosis Safe's fault. Like
Hmm.
they were not correctly protecting this code. They were not doing, I mean, someone like Gnosis Safe should have the most incredible set of security procedures around code getting out to production, the developers, right, of anybody. I mean,
Hmm.
just absolutely unbelievable. And they weren't do it. They came out. I'm gonna beat them up just a little bit, to be honest, because they came out the next day
Okay.
with their own retro, and they said, okay, this attack vector's been fixed. It's like, no, this attack vector of compromising an individual is always a threat. Like this is like, even if you took that developer's machine and you added antivirus to it, the fact is that there are a million different ways that you can get an individual developer to do something bad. They can do it on purpose. You can pay them money to do it. You can use, extortion, blackmail, all those kinds of things. Like the insider threat, which is one of the more overlooked but scarier threats within like computer security, is absolutely a terrifying thing, and that's exactly what was exploited here. So Sean, so Sean, I just spoke through that. Did anything I say, was anything there too technical, or did anything not make sense there? Anything to that I could add
No,
some clarification about?
no. I mean, it all makes, I think, sense from a intellectual point of view. But you know, uh, on that point, Pat, right? You know, I would I'd say that probably not every crypto entrepreneur or every entrepreneur who is now trying to onboard payments, for instance, using crypto, be it USDC or some other token, is aware of
Yep.
all of that, right? And so obviously, this attack was, as you noted, a highly targeted, highly technically oriented attack. So for the audience here, right? People working in the accounting, auditing, advisory space, right? What do we have to know in order to advise our clients to not have this happen?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a few things I would say here. So first and foremost, I would get very much in the habit of treating most of your crypto wallets like you would petty cash. So like,
Hmm.
as the more we've been doing about with payments, the more I've realized, like, the more things change, the more they stay the same. When we do a payment run, we even like think of it as like a check run, and you void checks, you void payments, like all this stuff is the same. Petty cash was a very like, the idea of how petty cash came around originally was this idea that like there is cash that floats out there that if it disappeared, it would suck, but it wouldn't be the end of your business. And like there was whole processes designed to track it and account for it and all that kind of stuff. But fundamentally, like this idea of petty cash was that you needed people to have access to cash, that you need people to have access to cash, and you needed the disappearance of either that person or that cash to not be the end of your business. And so I
Hmm.
would say that, so step one is that if you see your clients, if you see your coworkers, if you see the businesses you work with doing things like paying bills out of an account that has $10 million in it,
Hmm.
you should rethink that process.
Okay.
Like move to a model where you are thinking of like the petty cash wallets that are hotter wallets are never have more than $10,000 in it. And so if you have bills to pay, contractors to pay, anything like that, you are running a process with your treasury team where you run a report to get exactly what payments you're going to make for the next 2 weeks. You sweep funds into a petty cash wallet,
Hmm.
and then you use it from there. if
Okay.
you are if you are someone like Bybit, so here's where it gets kind of dicey, because I think for most of our customers, what they're probably doing, most of our like our partners and clients we work with, and the folks that are in the WSBA, the folks that we know and love, everybody here, most of those folks are not dealing with a single wallet that has
Hmm.
$1.5 billion in it, right?
Yep. It's clear. Yes.
And so like the micro version of this is like, you should be using a custodian like Coinbase, like Fireblocks, like someone like that, that has a entire security team that's doing nothing but keeping this that is doing nothing but keeping this in line.
Hmm.
And as part of that, it is ideal, like Fireblocks, Anchors, these guys all have they have two different forms of authorization. So you might go to the website and trigger a payment, but like they're often going to prompt you on your phone to
Yep.
actually do the approval of that payment. That is
Okay.
the safest way to do this. Like that as soon as you have two different form factors that you're interacting with, that is the
Hmm.
safest way to avoid these types of supply chain attacks that are just this is not the last one that we're going to see of these. So
No.
to kind of put that to sort of like say that again here is that if you have a large sum of money, keep that in a good reputable custodian that you can trust. If you have a smaller wallet that you use for more high, like for things that you don't want to bother your CTO to get his to like to sign into an account. You want to pay
Hmm.
bills, you want to do all that stuff. Just get into a process of running like a really clean petty cash process where you transfer once a week exactly how much money you need into this process. That's the only place you pay your bills off of. That you have a lot of approvals and you run a very, very strong controls process on the actual organization with a group that you trust. And Gnosis safes are one of those things like you can run these securely. So if you are at an organization that has a lot of money in a Gnosis safe, but doesn't have a strong security team, that's already a huge red flag. Like you should
Hmm.
not be
Yeah.
using Gnosis safe unless you have a very strong security team. The way you get around these sorts of attacks is that it's actually possible to run your own Gnosis Safe UI. So what you can do, like the way Gnosis Safe is it's a smart contract on the blockchain. So you
Hmm.
can actually run your entirely own, you can download their source code and run your entirely own from your own data center Gnosis Safe UI. So if you have a security team, that's what you should be doing. You should never trust somebody else. And then what
Okay.
they'll do is that every time Gnosis Safe makes an update to that source code, they'll review it. They'll make sure there's no backdoors. They'll look at all the committers, make sure no one from North Korea is committing code into it, and then deploy it locally on that side. But for the most part, if you have tens to hundreds of millions of dollars in Gnosis Safe, you better have a full security team that is helping you on that side of it.
Understood. And so, I mean, I would say that that's all really, sound, well thought out advice, Pat. But, as we're having our conversation here, it really does kind of hit me as how far this whole conversation has moved, right?
Yep.
Because from the original white paper to now, Bitcoin, as you had uh, outlined earlier on the podcast and then off air, there have been sort of different phases of on-chain assets, right? We've had
Yeah.
NFTs, we've had meme coins, all kinds of stuff. But now, right, as we are trying to get on-chain payments and on-chain assets more mainstream, the whole industry is really, to my mind at least, morphing into kind of sort of what the TradFi payment space has always had to do in terms of safeguards, controls, uh, petty cash policies, for our conversation here. So that's really interesting that as on-chain assets, grow up, right, and are becoming more of a established and a mature asset class, that the actual baseline fundamentals obviously are different, right, for
Yep.
on-chain assets, but a lot of the principles aren't all that much different.
Oh yeah, it's all just controls. I mean, like for what, like one of these days, I want to read a book about sock controls. Well, not really, but the history of sock controls and stuff.
The
Like, I
history of
mean, we've
sock
been
controls. Oh man, Pat, that would be a
no, no,
dense read.
let's maybe a book is the wrong word. Maybe one of these days I'm going to ask ChatGPT to sum it
There
up
we
in
go.
500 words. There we go.
Oh, perfect.
But but there's we like controls like this has been a concept for what a couple hundred years now. That's still the same thing. Like none of that has gone away. And I like we always forget this stuff as an industry. We always are like, no, everything's so different. Like, no, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And that goes
Hmm.
for controls more than anything. Like you as an organization need to be thinking about the controls you have in place for this. And so the control that I'm adding, like maybe you already had thought through multiple signers on any big transactions and using those safes and all that kind of stuff. And so that's the one form of control. The thing that I'm saying is that like if there's actually another control which you might not have thought about, which is if you are using someone's SaaS product like the Gnosis Safe is, you have to have some sort of supply chain control that is checking the validity of that code and that is not being hacked, because you should not be trusting that with billions of dollars without doing that kind of work. And it's all the same control framework. Like if you're a small person, that doesn't matter. If you have $10,000, like no one cares. But if you're Bybit and
Hmm.
you don't have a deep understanding of the supply chain risk that you're looking at, you have failed at a controls level in your organization.
Hmm. Well said, Pat. And obviously, as you had outlined, I doubt that the Bybit hack will be the last one of these. And so it's always good to have somebody with your really hands-on, technical expertise, operating a company, doing this all day, every day to add that uh point of view on this. Now, as I always do, and I always ask everyone this, I'm going to put you on the hot seat here, Pat, for a minute here. I'm going to ask you for one policy prediction for 2025, which I know is awfully hard uh, right now. And then
Yeah.
two, I'm going to ask you, outside of Bitcoin, which on-chain asset is going to have the best uh, year in 2025?
Yeah. So I will answer your first. I would never. Sean, you trapped me once before to making a Bitcoin 100K prediction. I missed it by a year, which you know what? It's not too bad. I'm not too
No,
bad.
that's not
But
too bad.
I would never hazard a guess on what's going to happen regulatorily this year. I have absolutely no idea. But I will say this for everybody who is listening, if you have any small amount of political sway with anybody who can do anything here, this is my deepest request is there's stablecoin legislation coming out.
Hmm.
I've heard about it, but I don't think anyone's actually seen it yet. I have
Hmm.
one deep request, which is that in that legislation, we need to carve out yield-bearing stablecoins as not securities.
Hmm.
That will change the world. Like we are in a situation now, we're in a weird regulatory situation, I think, where I'm not sure that anyone doing anything in crypto is going to be seriously looked at by the SEC this year. So maybe
Hmm.
that's a better prediction. But like it is the killer use case for crypto is payments. And the moment where payments becomes better than traditional payments is, traditionally what happens with when you're paying a bill, or even when you're getting direct deposit from your employer, they the company takes it out of the account, they hold it for 4 or 5 days, they earn float on it, and then they deposit it into your bank account. Someone like Bill.com, this is a new bit of information that I learned recently. Someone like Bill.com, they make 15% of their revenue from that float, which is like a
Wow.
staggering amount of money that I was even surprised. I thought it was gonna be like 5%.
Hmm. Yeah,
15% of
yeah.
revenue comes from that
Wow.
float. So when we get yield-bearing stable coins, we will have gone so full circle where not just are you not paying bips for movement of transactions, but up until the second I send you my money, I'm earning interest until the second I send you the money, and then you're earning interest the second you get that money. That same moment in time. So we have this like enormous amount of friction that covers fees and the like transaction fees, and then the float interest that's being frictioned off. Those two things go away, and a lot of it depends on clarity being provided that a yield-bearing stablecoin is not a security. And
Mm.
so if anyone out there can make that happen, that's my request. Sean, you talk to all these guys, you probably can make that happen. Let's sneak that into the bill at the very bottom, man. Just a little note. No one will even know.
I'll, I'll just add it in there, yeah. At the very
Just
end,
add it
Pat.
in
Yeah.
there.
I'll just add it in there, yeah. No, but Pat, it's always a blast having you on the podcast. I always come away after our conversations energized, and I always learn something new each and every time we have the opportunity to chat. So I will definitely have you on again on the podcast
Amazing.
during this year because there's guaranteed going to be something else happening that is going to be newsworthy for all of us, right, in the accounting space to be on top of.
Boy, howdy there is, man. Boy, howdy there is. Sean, thank you so much, buddy. I have always had an absolute amazing time on these. Thank you so much.
All right, Pat. Thank you again.